These are the famous Power Rangers. Interesting outfits.
Look, the Sentai is themed around pajamas for some reason, and the toys sold like crazy, so the production team's hands were tied. Welcome, my friends, to Power Rangers Wild Force.
Go, go, Power Rangers!
Power Rangers Wild Force's Red Ranger was played by an actor named Ricardo Medina Jr. In 2015, Medina stabbed his roommate with a sword, and eventually he pled guilty to voluntary manslaughter, sentenced to prison for a few years, and was released in 2020. Now, this detail is not really at all relevant to Wild Force or even Medina's appearances later on, since they were all filmed and aired before he did this, which is why I have not mentioned it in other videos, but I feel like if I don't bring it up now, where he plays one of, if not the main character of the season, people will ask why I did not. The mastodon in the room, if you will. I much prefer bringing up more pleasant trivia, or if it's something tragic or horrible, it's only brought up because it's important to know for the show, like Valerie Vernon's leukemia. I have not always been the best about sticking to that policy, but hopefully I will do better going forward. And backwards when it comes to the remade versions of these videos, like the one you're watching now. And that can't really be helped for the stuff made and uploaded a while ago. And with that, let's talk about Wild Force's production and behind the scenes a bit. Wild Force is a transitionary season. Disney purchased Power Rangers in 2001. Disney buying a franchise? Why, that's unheard of. Although it would be more accurate to say that Power Rangers was just part of a purchase that they made, acquiring a large block of shows and programming with the Fox Family Worldwide company. Wild Force was in pre-production before the sale occurred, and its first half or so aired on Fox before then being moved over to ABC Family for the remainder. There was a preview at the end of Time Force for the show, and had an alternate theme song for that preview. It's rumored that the preview was an attempt to try to get Disney to pay royalties to Saban to continue using that theme song. They did not use it, though, hey, it's not a bad alternate theme. Anyway, point is that Wild Force technically is a Disney season because Disney owned it at the time and basically paid for it, and that'll affect things significantly in later episodes, but it's hard to think of it as a Disney season because everything about it, the production team, the video and audio quality, the writers, and the fact that it was celebrating Power Rangers' 10th anniversary makes this feel like a Saban season. Trust me, this will be very apparent when we get to the next season how things look and feel different under Disney's more direct management. The season begins with Lionheart, and the show's format has stopped using a pre-credits teaser, something they'd been doing since Turbo. It's the first season where the Zords are mostly CG, for better or worse, and the first season without a Pink Ranger, swapping out with White. It should be noted that about 90% of the CGI was from the original Sentai, Gal Ranger, so it's not like Wild Force is to blame for the CG Zords, and they look... yeah, early 2000s kids TV show CGI. On a more positive note, I love the Wild Force theme song. While the theme songs have had to grow on me in the last few seasons, Wild Force I loved from the first time I heard it. It's very energetic, catchy, and it easily got me excited for the show.
Wild Force, Power Rangers!
We open on a jungle where we see our Red Ranger, Cole Evans, talking to a chimpanzee. Swear to God if this thing turns out to be the alpha of the season. Anyway, he's brought to a ceremony by the other tribespeople of the jungle in... Jungle Land, which is conducted by James Earl Jones.
The time has come for you to follow your own life path.
Remember, my child, this is CNN. The guy explains that they found him as a baby along with a photograph and a little red jawbreaker. The guy says it's time to send him off into the outside world. For some reason. We cut to a city, Turtle Cove, where a monster fights off a group of rangers. The animal focus of this team gives them some new abilities, like the Blue Shark Ranger being able to fight underwater, and the Yellow Ranger, based on an eagle, being able to fly. The monster, aided by another, manages to get away and the rangers demorph. They refer to the monsters as orgs, and that they're shocked that two of them were together at once.
Something's changed.
Yeah, I can feel it.
We need a 5th ranger.
Meanwhile, Cole arrives in the city, oh, so he was in that jungle in California, asking random bystanders about the people in the photograph. That night, he sees a dog getting taken by a van owned by a laboratory and follows it. He frees all the caged test animals at the lab, which no doubt leads to a 28 days later scenario where our heroes fight rage zombies. Or rather, from above, he's watched by a woman in white who contacts the Rangers. When the two lab people see a monster flying overhead, they see it as a sign that their master has returned, and they transform into the henchmen of the series, Jindrax and Toxica. The next morning, Cole wakes up with the other Rangers standing over him and telling him that he needs to come with them. While 3 of the Rangers are excitable and creepy with wanting to bring him with, the Yellow Ranger just punches him in the stomach and tells him he's been drafted. Man, 10 years and so much has changed since the original recruitment methods. Kinda hard to see Zordon going with that.
You have been chosen to form an elite group of heroes to fight Rita. And if you don't join up, Alpha's gonna whoop your ass until you do.
I'll do it too! I'll knock you back so hard you'll think this was still the Sentai! They bring the unconscious Cole to a floating island above the clouds called the Animarium, where their Zords roam freely, kinda like the Galactabeasts. Cole is able to understand the Lion Zord and his red orb glows. After walking some more, he meets the woman in white, named Princess Sheila.
You have been chosen to be leader of the Power Rangers Wild Force.
He gets to be the leader because... well, he can talk to chimps. That's just hard science right there. The others introduce themselves finally. Alyssa with the tiger, Danny with the bison, Max with the shark, and Punch Rockfist, aka Taylor, with the eagle. The other 4 also have the little soap orbs with plastic Zords inside of them, and Sheila explains that they're going to fight the Orgs.
Sorry we had to kidnap you.
Our heroes, everybody! They're all pretty new to this themselves, but the fact that they have the orbs too indicates that this is Cole's destiny. And as we saw last season, everyone must follow their destiny. Wait. As a monster attack begins, the Rangers head out to a dam to fight them. Taylor hands him the Growl Morpher and tells him to do as they do.
Wild access! Wild access!
The fight scene here showcases the different fighting styles of each ranger, their movements meant to emulate their animals. The claws at the ends of their hands are kinda silly, especially when you consider some of the respective animals don't have claws, but hey, it's Power Rangers, and I suppose most animals don't have crystal sabers either. The suits themselves? Awesome. The helmet design does really well with their animals and feels reminiscent of the Mighty Morphin days. The primary colors to the suits are well focused, and while the gold diagonal sash across them is an odd design aesthetic, it does work. The number of stripes on each one also reflecting their number on the team, though not their order of recruitment. The morphing sequence is a direct translation of the original Sentais and is pretty badass. That all being said, I hate the Growl Morphers. This is the first, and sadly will not be the last, series to use cell phones as the Morphers, and I think it's stupid. Admittedly, the basic wrist strap Morpher was kinda getting a little boring. When Time Force just kinda waves their fingers across the Morpher, you know they're not trying anymore. But making a common everyday item a Morpher feels sad. I feel the Morphers should be unique devices, something you wouldn't normally see all the time on the streets. It makes the Rangers all the more special. They have been given these awesome gifts to help save mankind. Pulling out cell phones to morph makes me fear that at some point that the morphing sequence is going to get interrupted by someone texting them a selfie over a defeated monster. I get the idea that making them innocuous is good for maintaining secret identities, and by the time of In Space, the communicators and morphers had started to be the same objects anyway. But to me, cell phone morphers just don't seem as cool. It also leads to less interesting designs, in my opinion, because they all have to fit with the same flip phone aesthetic. Some variations on the idea do help in other seasons, but here it's just a gold flip phone. Nothing that interesting or unique about it. Anyway, the Rangers defeat one of the Orgs and the other retreats, being intercepted by Toxica and Jindrax. It says that the two are Duke Orgs, who do something to make it grow. Cole decides to leap right at the Org, but gets smacked back down. I mean, could you imagine if a Ranger was just able to defeat a giant monster on his own just by leaping at it? Okay, actually, that would have worked if Carter had done it. By combining their orbs with the swords, the Rangers summon the Wild Zords. The downside to CGI Zords is that it can sometimes lead to very unconvincing fights, as we saw with the first Power Rangers movie. However, in this case it works. The fight is fast-paced, the music pretty good, and the sound effects convincing.
And so the journey begins. Destiny has brought 5 young people together.
Who the hell was talking? Lionheart is a decent start to the season, but it leaves a lot to be desired. We don't get a lot of focus on the Rangers other than Cole, and you don't really get an idea about what exactly the Rangers are doing from the first episode. Comparatively, Lightspeed Rescue's goal was to eliminate the demons and prevent them from restoring Banshira's palace. Time Force's goal was to recapture Ransik and the other mutants and bring them back to the future. Wild Force's goal is purportedly to defeat the Orgs, but we know very little about the Orgs, where they came from, why they're attacking, and who their leader is. It's not that the episode is bad, it just feels a little incomplete. As we continue, Cole contemplates whether there's another way to stop the Orgs besides fighting them. The other Rangers speculate that the Orgs must be getting help, since none of them had grown so large before. Jindrax and Toxica head into caverns under the city and meet their boss, Master Org.
Where have you two been?
They explain that since the final battle, they took on human form and have been living among humans ever since. Toxica notes that while Master Org feels just as evil as he used to, his appearance has radically changed. The two are dispatched to find the latest Org, while the Rangers head out for it as well. Cole says the Orgs may just be like animals that are lost and confused, and there may be some reasoning with it. Alyssa explains that he doesn't really know what he's talking about.
Max and I have only been Rangers for about 6 months. Danny only 2. Taylor, she's been one for over a year.
Man, either Shayla's been kind of slow in the whole recruiting process, or she's offering really crappy wages. The Org summons up the foot soldiers of the season, Putrids, which are essentially gray cavemen with purple eyes and mouths. Not bad, but nothing too impressive. Cole and Alyssa head in, Cole getting face to face with the Org. He says that every living thing has a heart, so if he can connect with it, they can find peace.
I can't hear anything. You don't have a heart.
And you don't have a brain!
Ouch, score one for the Org. It tells him that Orgs exist only to destroy and wreak havoc before it beats the two up. Cole is flabbergasted by the revelation that something without a heart could exist, and he realizes that fighting is the only way. Toxica and Jindrax show up and reveal themselves to the Rangers, Toxica displaying her skills as a sorceress by using peanuts to make the Org grow. They summon their Zords and form the Wild Force Megazord. The cockpit's a bit different, but matching with a more naturalistic or cave-like feel instead of more technological ones. The Duke Orgs return to Master Org, who gives a little speech.
They shall feel the wrath of 3,000 years of vengeance!
Cole gets cleaned up and given a bath. Man, this team really doesn't believe in personal space, does it? And they give him his spiffy team jacket, but he rips the sleeves to make a bandana like he had before. In the next episode, technically a filler, we get some more character development in the form of Cole laughing off the Ranger rulebook, which I imagine is more of a procedural system than actual rules given the size of that binder.
The only rule that we need is teamwork.
That's not really a rule, more a mission statement. And no, it's not the only rule you need. For instance, no peeing in the magic viewing pool. You'd think you wouldn't need that rule, but remember, a lot of safety guidelines exist on things because people can be idiots. Or corporations can be greedy and not care about people's well-being, something that would actually be kind of an important factoid to spread in a season all about environmental awareness. Sheila gives a background on the Animarium, conveniently juxtaposed with a mother reading to her son from a storybook. The exact same story. This is kind of a stupid way of providing exposition. I mean, in terms of presentation in a TV show, it's perfectly fine, but in universe, perhaps the whole background of your series shouldn't be available from the children's book department. In the original version of this video, I basically let the whole backstory be shown. Over 2 minutes of footage from an episode with just a handful of jokey captions over it. Blip let us get away with a lot of footage to be shown, but they did have a department to deal with copyright stuff. Obviously not nearly as draconian as YouTube's is, but still, it existed, and some of my colleagues had to deal with DMCA takedowns. I am in shock that I ever got away with showing the whole backstory. I have to truncate it for this version, and I still run the risk of it getting claimed and either the video blocked or all ad revenue gets taken by a company that didn't even own it 5 years ago at the time of this video's release, much less the 12 that it's been since I made the first version. Anyway, 3,000 years ago, there was a land called Animaria.
Animals and humans coexisted side by side. Everyone lived in harmony.
We lived in peace with mosquitoes, bedbugs, and locusts.
There was nothing but joy and beauty in all our lives.
Sewer systems hadn't been invented yet, but at least I could hold a conversation with a giant robot bison. Also, animals were robots. The miracle of nature. Some sort of goop in the ground unleashed the Orgs and their leader, Master Org, who unleashed toxic CGI tentacles into people and nature alike that destroyed them. 5 legendary warriors with attitude, who also happen to be wearing parts of Quantron armor. Hey, the show is promoting recycling. Fought off Master Org's forces, but the battle grew intense enough that Sheila's personal guard took her to the Valley of the Wild Zords, where she could be protected by the 5 primary Wild Zords of our heroes. And I guess the utter annihilation of her home and society is a bit exhausting, since she then fell into a deep sleep. The 5 warriors then combined their crystal sabers together, and this made the valley rise up into the sky, creating the Animarium. They then proceeded to kill the Master Org and entomb the remaining Orgs underground.
But over the years, humans have allowed the world to become polluted.
My God, are high schools not even forming cleanup clubs anymore? This is why public education has gone downhill. According to Sheila, the pollution has gotten so bad that the Earth is weakened and it allowed the Orgs to rise again. No explanation is offered for where the hell the Orgs came from originally if things were so peaceful and nice that pollution was non-existent 3,000 years ago. What's funny is that this actually could have been a fun educational tidbit for real-world history, because air pollution has actually been a problem for thousands of years, ever since man began to do stuff with coal burning, wood burning, and smelting. And hey, we see in these flashbacks people wearing armor and jewelry, so having metallic pollutants in the air wouldn't be unreasonable. But they don't mention that, which is what makes this backstory kind of frustrating. Sheila says specifically that everyone respected the importance of nature, but she doesn't explain what the hell that means exactly. They can't mean they didn't use nature for their own purposes, because they still had to use nature for food and for clothing and shelter. Not that there isn't importance in respecting nature, sustainability, replanting parts of the ecosystem that are torn down for use by humanity, aiding any animal life that's affected by it, not needlessly killing parts of it or damaging the environment through mining or deforestation, etc. This season has a very strong environmental message, but as is often the case with media intended for children, the message is oversimplified and dumbed down to basic platitudes. Save the environment! Don't pollute! Sure, you don't have to explain all the complexities of the world when it comes to environmentalism and the difficulties faced by attempting to help nature, but especially in later episodes when a certain character is introduced that criticizes large-scale industrial pollution, you can introduce the idea to kids that humanity's advancement is going to exploit nature to a degree, that they were doing so even 3,000 years ago in a supposed utopia, and that there are safer ways that it can be done. But some refuse to do so for various reasons, and we need to work to change that. Or, you could just say, pollution bad, it creates pollution monsters. That works too. Anyway, here's the explanation for why Cole is the leader.
As the lion is king of the jungle, so is his chosen ranger.
Really? That's the reason? Geez, maybe we do need that ranger rulebook.
Will you read it again? Please read it again.
Yeah, Mommy, tell me more about the horrible destruction of the perfect paradise. Alyssa, while on a field trip with her class to an archaeological site, uncovers a seal with the ranger's animals on it while hearing the sound of an elephant. Alyssa and Cole take Princess Sheila to it, wanting to see if she recognizes it. However, Master Org senses it and kidnaps the princess. To pursue, the rangers get their motorcycles, which actually are their Zords in a reduced form. I'm assuming this is how they're getting around the whole motorcycles cause pollution, so why are they using them thing? Or not, considering they then summon their Zords again later while the motorcycles are still active. What? When Sheila says she can't release the trapped animal since the animal spirit needs to choose its guardian, Master Org blasts the seal. However, when Alyssa touches the rock face, Alyssa is given a new orb that she can put in her sword, releasing the Elephant Zord. Sheila explains that there were many power animals in the past, but only 5 came onto the Animarium. That means there could be more waiting to be discovered. One night, Toxica thinks she smells a human in the cave, and as she investigates, she sees Master Org apparently able to move the horn on his head, the horn being a thing associated with all the Orgs. Next, the Rangers retrieve a Giraffe Zord, that for some reason was hiding in the water, for Max. In the following episode, we see a flashback from Taylor about how, as an Air Force pilot, she discovered her Eagle Zord and crashed on the floating Animarium, awakening Princess Sheila. She also apparently let everyone believe she was dead. Kind of a bummer, especially since we never get an explanation why she doesn't tell anyone she's alive. Yeah, they'd want to find the Animarium, but I feel like they could arrange something convincing, though it does explain why she can be so grouchy. Consequently, she also retrieves 2 new animal Zords at the same time, a black bear that controls fire, and a polar bear that controls ice. While in a forest, Cole encounters Master Org, calling him a coward after saying that all the destruction he's causing is pathetic. Weird word choices, still, they certainly strike a nerve.
I fear nothing! It is you who should be in fear! Ah!
Ouch, getting hit head on without even being morphed. Still, Cole, it was rude to point. As Cole gets tossed around, and may I just say, the wirework stunts of this season have been really damn impressive. The photo of his parents drops to the ground. Master Org takes it, and we get a flashback of Cole's parents fleeing from someone who looks like Master Org. Cole's father saying that he must have taken the seeds. The flashback ends with Cole's parents being wrapped up in vines and revealing that the baby was hidden away. Cole also retrieves another Zord, a gorilla that enables them to form a new Megazord, the Conga Zord. They also locate the egg of a soul bird, another Zord that has tremendous healing properties. The egg hatches into a new cockpit for the Conga Zord, which admittedly is odd considering they got the Conga Zord a single episode before they got the new cockpit, as well as a big cannon. I probably shouldn't be trying to question the biology of giant mechanical animals whose offspring become cockpits and weapons. The main story continues in Curse of the Wolf. Master Org dispatches a monster, General Nazor, to unlock another Duke Org, one very much faster and stronger than the Rangers.
I am the Duke Org, Zenaku.
It freezes the Elephant Zord's orb and takes it, walking off and swearing revenge for being locked away for 3,000 years. Toxica states that there's something unusually familiar about Zenaku, who makes it clear that he works for no one.
My only goal is revenge against the Rangers.
We see Zenaku have flashbacks about his fight with the 5 ancient warriors, though he apparently can't remember all the details, including how he came to look like he does in the first place. His odd behavior continues as he also heals an injured Alyssa while she's unconscious, though attacks the Rangers when they're reunited. They morph and fight Zenaku, managing to force him back a little and proclaim that Orgs can't use the Wild Zords.
Are you so certain only you possess crystals?
He summons the hammerhead shark, alligator, and wolf Dark Zords using a flute, very reminiscent of Tommy's dragon dagger. And for his next trick, he's going to summon a weird deer for you to ride. While the Rangers fight Zenaku, the Wild Zords face their dark counterparts. Despite superior numbers and firepower, the Dark Zords are simply too much for the Wild ones. Toxica suddenly recalls there being a wolf at the final battle 3,000 years before. Sheila gives the backstory on the Dark Zords, that they used to be good, but Zenaku is so powerful that he made them do evil deeds. The Dark Zords, in turn, can combine to make his own Megazord, the Predazord. And the thing looks more than a little silly with a big-ass gator head sticking out of its chest. Although what's especially weird is that the thing can flatten out, so why does it bother sticking out when it first forms? Sure, it later can be used as a big cannon, but it just stands there for several seconds with this top-heavy head just jutting out like that. Anyway, Zenaku takes the crystal for the Giraffe Zord. Toxica talks to Zenaku and mentions how it must be difficult to work with Master Org after what happened 3,000 years ago. But Zenaku doesn't know what she's talking about. In the battle that follows with the Rangers, Zenaku is able to summon the Elephant and Giraffe Zords to his side, even able to combine them with the Predazord as the Rangers could. Sheila heads down to where Zenaku was released, attempting to get more information about him. Zenaku kidnaps her when he recognizes the necklace she's wearing.
Someone very special gave it to me a long time ago. I wear it in memory of that person.
Zenaku doesn't know why he remembers it. In the ensuing battle, Sheila is rescued, but the Bear Zords are taken. Though more interestingly, Sheila notices that Zenaku was bleeding. As more of Zenaku's memories return, he recalls seeing some sort of shining Megazord. During his next Zord battle with the Rangers, the shining Megazord appears in the sky and speaks, telling him to remember. Sheila recognizes it as a being called Animus, the ancestor of the Wild Force Megazords, who also fought in the battle 3,000 years ago. She says it's odd that he would talk to Zenaku.
Before, he would only speak to the 6 warriors. Six warriors?
Yeah, what the hell, Sheila? Every other time she mentions them, it was only 5. Zenaku gets infected with an insect that rewrites his memory, while the Rangers speculate about how nothing seems to add up about Zenaku, and Sheila brings up his bleeding. Taylor suggests that maybe he's actually a human. Zenaku hands over the Rangers' Zords to General Nazor. Sheila talks to the other Rangers and says that Animus came to her in a vision and explained what happened 3,000 years ago after Master Org was defeated by the ancient warriors. Apparently Zenaku was the 6th warrior, originally named Merrick, who had tricked Master Org somehow using the wolf mask. However, the wolf mask was cursed and he couldn't remove it, and that it was making him evil. He begged the other warriors to destroy him, but instead they sealed him away. Combining several clues together, the Rangers realize that the moon is what's powering the wolf mask. Well, I guess we know how to fix this then. They fight Zenaku, but are unable to convince him of the truth, partially thanks to the bug in his head. However, before he makes the killing stroke, Animus casts a shadow over the moon to block it. With the moon fully eclipsed, he reverts back to Merrick, who gives more details about why he became Zenaku. Animus was destroyed by Master Org, and Merrick took it upon himself to wear the cursed wolf mask and use its power to destroy the big bad. When they inform him that Sheila is awake, he tries to tell them how to break the curse, but the shadow falls from the moon and he becomes Zenaku again. Sheila realizes that the true way to break the curse is to destroy the Pretazord. Don't know how the heck she reaches that conclusion, but I guess it's more convenient than trying to keep the moon blocked forever. Although this is Power Rangers, I can buy that they could do that. In order to make the plot resolve as quickly as possible, the Bison Zord contacts Danny and gives him 2 more animal crystals, the Armadillo and Rhino Zords. I see we have switched out what show we're watching. It's now time for Plot Convenience Playhouse. They combine the new Zords together and, use the Armadillo as a soccer ball against the Pretazord, which summons a CGI soccer stadium to cheer them on. You know, this plot was going really well up until this point. It was tense, it was moving towards a logical resolution, and then, bam! 2 Zords out of nowhere, and then soccer stadium. It's a very rushed and nonsensical end to the Zenaku plot. Oh, wait, maybe they got a 3rd Wild Zord here. The Stadium Wild Zord! Their cheering gives a +2 to their attack stat. Anyway, the Pretazord is destroyed and the wolf curse is lifted, Sheila going to the unconscious Merrick. She runs off when she hears the Rangers approaching, for some reason. With Merrick back, they introduce themselves properly and offer to join hands with him. But...
I try to destroy you. My hand isn't fit to touch yours.
And then this.
We have marched along together through the dark and stormy rain, and we face the fight together.
Not bad, guys, but it's gonna take a lot more than that to join Bandora's dance party. God, it feels weird to make a Sentai reference like that in History of Power Rangers. Quick, I need something more American.
Let's send out a search party. We've got to find that pizza.
Anyway, Merrick appears to the 2 and says he wants to see Master Org, who conveniently shows up with General Nazor. He bows down to them at first, but then tries to attack Master Org, who easily disarms him. Merrick calls out for his animal Zords, but he can no longer hear them. Master Org fuses the crystals together to create a chimera entity, because he can do that, apparently. The Rangers, spotting that Merrick is in trouble, morph and head off to help him. The Chimera is too much for them, and Merrick rises, charging right at the entity and screaming like a madman. Despite his brilliant strategy of yelling insanely, he's knocked aside. The Red Lion Zord roars, awakening Merrick's Zords and forming his Morpher.
Well, access!
The Lunar Wolf Ranger's weapon is, of course, a gun that becomes a sword, and then becomes a, pool cue? But it's sadly not quite as impressive as other weapons due to its more cylindrical appearance as opposed to an actual blade. He summons the Pretazord, now free of evil influence, and with the help of the Wild Force Megazord, they're able to defeat the combined entity and reclaim the stolen animals. In the process, Merrick destroys General Nazor. Merrick returns the crystals and walks off. In a flashback, we of course confirm that Merrick was Sheila's lover and was the one who gave her the necklace. Merrick heads to a bar and naturally starts playing pool with his animal crystals, because that's certainly the most disrespectful thing you could be doing with them. Some very rude bikers come in, and we get a delightful scene of him beating them all up. The bartender brings him on as a bouncer and lets him stay at the bar's spare room. Merrick helps the Rangers with a new general org, Necronomica, but says he can't work with them. Why? I really have no idea. It made sense when he was repentant for what happened to Zenaku, but otherwise it's just bizarre. Sheila and Merrick reunite, but Merrick says he can't be with her because of their different roles in life. And yeah, that's really rather forced, what with him giving her the necklace and all, but what you gonna do? Drama and all that. They destroy Necronomica, but it turns out it was Toxica, who was enhanced thanks to a spell along with the last remaining piece of General Nazor. She assumed the power partially due to fear of Master Org, since she's now dead certain that he isn't who they think he is. Afterwards, Merrick says he'll work with the others, but he doesn't want to go to the Animarium. Still, he gets his own unique team jacket. Where did Sheila get those anyway? Did she just, make them over the course of the last year? Or were those jackets always around in the ancient past? Master Org tortures Toxica for attempting to impersonate a general, Jindrax saving her from being completely destroyed. Alyssa gets the idea of cross-referencing the photo Cole has of his family with some library records and uncovers an article about them, along with the complete picture, revealing that his parents are presumed dead. Toxica says that every time she's near Master Org, she can smell a human, and the two go down to his lair to find evidence. There, they find a copy of Cole's picture, including showing Master Org as a human. He tries to berate them for this, but Toxica blasts him, revealing that his third eye and horn are actually part of his hat. In return, he shoots them with his staff and alters their appearances, making them fall completely under his spell. Cole goes to his family's graves.
I came all the way down here to find my parents, and all I have left are these gold stones.
Following that, we learn how Max joined the Rangers, helping save two girls from an org before being rescued himself by Taylor and Alyssa. We also learn that Master Org's human name was Victor Adler. A Deer Zord comes to help the Rangers, one familiar to Merrick and Sheila because they used to sing to it, along with horrible green screen shots of nature.
Each day when the sun rises, I hurry from my sleep. From your skies the snow gently falls to the earth. I can't wait to greet you with my song.
Well, good job convincing me that the orgs should destroy humanity and nature, Sheila! Look, she's not a bad singer, and the tune would be fine, though clearly it wants to be Colors of the Wind from Pocahontas. But the lyrics are insipid, and this is just a personal thing with me. Quite frankly, I'm not fond of songs that don't have any kind of rhyming scheme to them. Your mileage may vary, but the lines aren't exactly carrying through a wondrous presentation of nature. The song is essentially, la la la, nature is nice, I like nature. And the visuals, instead of making me reflect on the natural beauty of the earth, just remind me of David Hasselhoff singing Hooked on a Feeling.
Oh, nature, please don't ever go away.
Hooked on a feeling, and I'm high on believing.
Oh, and to compare it to Colors of the Wind again, say what you will about it, but it has a grandiosity in its instrumentation, a horn section, build up to big sweeping moments, and variation in the pacing. This is just a single flute that's going the same tempo and tone throughout. I hate this song, and they play it several times in the season after this point. Sometimes the same as always, and once as a remix that sounds slightly better than the normal one. In a single filler episode, we get a fourfold of new weapons. The first is the Falcon Summoner bow and arrow weapon. Next is Cole's Battleizer, the Animarium armor. This Battleizer looks pretty damn good with bird wings, a chest plate, and the greaves I've always said feet armor should be. Finally, there's the Red Falcon Zord, which joins the deer, rhino, armadillo, and giraffe to form the Isis Megazord. It can fly and use its wings as a shield. The battle with Cole also reverts Toxica and Jindrax back to their old selves, who withdraw when they spot Master Org and plot their next move. So, Taylor gets herself a new car and starts driving around really fast. Because nothing says environmentalism and the beauty of nature quite as much as loud engines, speeding, and exhaust fumes. However, she ends up stopped and given a ticket. Probably doesn't help that for some reason she takes off her seatbelt upon stopping. And we see who it was who stopped Chapter.
I could just tell she was trouble.
Just your type.
You kidding?
Wait, I just realized, did Silver Hills have a regular police force? Or did Mr. Collins end up privatizing them and absorbing them into the Silver Guardians? Three monsters teleport into an alleyway and start causing havoc. Gindrax and Toxica follow an energy trail until they come upon the monsters in an alleyway and... Wait, is that Deviat's mutated form? Man, they really were reusing costumes. The two try to recruit them, thinking that they're orgs, but the three shove them aside and make their way to the nearest city, where they're intercepted by the Silver Guardians. The three walk through them as if they were nothing, though Wes and Eric do put up more of a fight and morph, which is a bit head-tilting. You'd think the Time Force would insist on taking the advanced morpher technology back with them. Anyway, even morph, the two are tossed aside until help arrives.
Hold it right there, orgs! All right, more Rangers!
The monsters retreat for the time being, and the two teams meet up, Taylor angrily recognizing Eric as the one who gave her a ticket. Before they can get into a fight, the two are pulled back and reminded that they're all the good guys here.
Well, why don't you guys leave fighting the mutants to the big boys?
Mutants? You mean orcs?
Back at Biolabs, Wes apparently has a kit left behind that he can use to contact the Rangers in the future. Trip answers, explaining the three fugitives have been on the run and must have somehow made their way back to 2002. He also states that Jen was the one on special assignment to pursue them, but they haven't heard back from her in a few weeks now. The three monsters talk with each other in backwards talk while someone else watches from the shadows with a translator. Wes and Eric go to Taylor and the groups decide to join forces. She brings them to the Animarium and they get a signal from Trip again, who tells them that the three are some sort of half-breeds of mutant and org, called Mutorgs. Fortunately, they know someone who they think can help. Back in the past, as Danny and Max do some bonding, Eric comments that Taylor's got some interesting friends.
They drive me crazy sometimes.
I used to feel the same way about my friends.
Wes and Cole talk, the former telling him about how there are other Power Rangers out there. Nadira goes to visit her father in prison, which is surprisingly not a cryo prison. So did the changes in the timeline alter how future prisons worked? Or did Rancic get transferred to a lower prison for good behavior? As an immobile action figure? And if this was an option, what about the mutant who was in it for petty theft? In the present, the Rangers go to intercept the Mutorgs. They morph and charge the three, but thanks to some impressive stunt work and fight choreography, the Mutorgs are too much for the seven. Wes is forced to demorph, but is saved by the figure in the cloak.
Jen!
Holy crap, Jen, that's special assignment gear for Time Force? Unfortunately, I can't show more of this sequence, but Jen just leaps down, does some impressive flips, and shoots the hell out of the Mutorgs before they retreat. It is supremely badass. The Mutorgs arrive at Master Org's cave, now actually referred to as the Nexus, and bow to him, ending part 1. The Rangers, in the meantime, return to the Animarium, upset over how they got smacked around. Wes and Jen talk briefly, Jen admitting that she's been in their time period for a week, to Wes's irritation that she made no effort to talk to him, nor do we get an explanation beyond her saying she wanted to. And it can't really be about polluting the timeline, he already knows about the future. Circuit contacts the team, informing them that the other Time Force Rangers are on the way. Our heroes from last season reunite, but also...
I've done many horrible things in the past. Allow me to make up for this one.
Of course. I'm smart.
Cole uses his ability to sense living beings' hearts to indicate that Rancic is indeed here to help. They all go to the Animarium, and Rancic explains that during his years wandering, he came across a ruined temple where 3 orgs were encased in stone. The orgs promised him power if they were freed, and Rancic gladly did so, especially when they mentioned that they would destroy humans. The org spirits copied his mutant DNA and became the Mutorgs, and in return, they gave him some of his abilities, like extracting swords from his body. Oh, and since I already referenced DBZ Abridged, and people reminded me of this clip from last time.
That's not fair. I can't pull swords out of my body.
Stand still and you will!
I have a chance to make things right, if you will trust me.
We can't change the past, but we can work for a better future.
While Wes and Jen cuddle up, Taylor and Eric flirt. It's cute, even if it really doesn't go anywhere. Meanwhile, Master Org and the Mutorgs head to an industrial site to create as much pollution as they can to alter time. The Rangers split up and charge forward, blasting or kicking ass as they go along. Jen and Alyssa are particularly impressive wielding the Time Force guns. Just some really good effects work, cinematography, and choreography here. The Mutorgs run into Wes, Cole, Nadira, and Rancic, the latter two being injured by one of them.
Now it's up to me to fix my mistake. I kill you now!
Rancic succeeds in destroying their mutant halves, somehow, and the others run off to deal with Mutorgs, Nadira staying with her father. As the monsters retreat, they're intercepted by Merrick, who is here now, I guess, and the other Rangers. The two teams morph, and like last season, we're only using the Wild Force theme song over it, but honestly, the Wild Force theme song is good enough that it works. Reinforcements from the Future is the best team-up since To the 10th Power, and arguably even better than that. It continues the storylines of Time Force while also helping advance the Wild Force Rangers as characters. The fight choreography is superb, showing the teams working in sync to defeat the Mutorgs. There are unmorphed fights, morphed fights, excellent acting, and all around, it's just a very enjoyable two-parter. The pacing is exquisite. Every scene exists just long enough to serve its purpose, and nothing drags. This is the team-up I've been wanting for the past few seasons, and it delivers perfectly. With combined blasts from all the Rangers, including Battleizer modes, the three Mutorgs are destroyed, and the Rangers return to Rancic. To their shock, his mutated parts are completely healed. Don't quite get that, but hey, I like a happy ending, and it's always been implied that his mutation, especially after Venomark's bite, is not exactly a pleasant thing for Rancic. We get a montage of the Rangers interacting with each other set to a remix of that horrible song that Sheila was singing to the Deer Zord. Like I said, it's somewhat better than the original, so it kind of works, though that may be because the lyrics are more incomprehensible. Kudos to the show for putting in nods to Time Force, like Katie arm wrestling and Lucas and Nadira seeming to hook up. Following the team-up, Toxica and Jindrax head to a desert to locate an object to help stop the supposedly fake Master Org. Speaking of, Master Org swears that if he's going down, he's taking the Rangers with him. Alyssa sees a news report that Dr. Adler, the scientist who was with Cole's parents when they were supposedly killed, was located and brought to a hospital. However, when they go to see him, he takes the Rangers prisoner. He reveals himself as Master Org and that he killed Cole's parents.
And I enjoyed every single minute of it.
He exposits that they were once his friends, working together to try to study the legend of Animaria. He fell in love with Cole's mother, but apparently she and Cole's dad were dating, and he asked her to marry him first.
He betrayed me!
Everybody betrayed me. I fed up with his world.
12 years people have been asking me to make that comparison with his accent, so I hope it was worth the wait. Anyway, yeah, Master Org's a bit of a dick. Nothing in the flashback indicates that he and her were even dating, yet he expected to just ask her to marry him and that'd be that. Sure, it's possible that Cole's father knew about his feelings and stepped over them, but even Cole's mother refers to him as Dr. Adler and not by his first name, so despite supposedly being close friends, not close enough to call him by his first name. Still, his jealousy and whatnot were probably not helped by reporters wanting to talk to Cole's father and not him, giving him all the credit for their work. By the by, points to the costuming department, who went the extra mile by having Dr. Adler and Cole's father look like they stepped out of the late 70s, early 80s with their clothes and hairstyles. The dates aren't specifically mentioned, but the time frame roughly fits, and it's a neat attention to detail. Anyway, he grew to hate them, and during an expedition to where Animaria was originally located, in the Amazon, wait, the Amazon? The reason Turtle Cove is so named is because of the turtle-shaped lake in the town. And said lake is there because it's where the Animarium took off from. So Merrick brought Princess Sheila from the Amazon all the way up to California for the escape? Anyway, they discover the remnants of the original Master Org. Dr. Adler says he's going to destroy them, but instead he consumed the remains and became Master Org, killing the two as we saw in the flashback a while ago. Back in the present, Cole gets knocked around by Master Org, just getting slammed into pipes. Seriously, ouch, this season really stepped up the unmorphed injuries. Toxica and Jindrax, meanwhile, locate an ancient Org general and reawaken it. After getting beaten up a bit, Cole ramps up the hamminess.
I'm a guardian of the earth! Ah!
Acting! morphing! However, his overacting pays off by kicking Master Org in the face and morphing. Merrick arrives and frees the other Rangers, while Cole initiates his battleizer to fend off Master Org. He absorbs one of Master Org's blasts and sends it back at him, forcing him to revert back to Dr. Adler. He tries in vain to use his abilities, but it doesn't seem to work, Cole saying it's time for them to go. Adler wants to know why he won't finish him off, but Cole says that all the time Adler spent seeking revenge poisoned him, and he refuses to take the same path. So I think what we're getting from all this is that toxic masculinity was the real Master Org. Weakened from the battle, Adler crawls through the desert back to his lair before running into the two Duke Orgs and their new master, Mandalok, an Org with two personalities, one male and one female, coexisting within it. They shove Adler off a cliff to kill him, but at the end of the episode, a horn grows from his forehead and his eyes open. Mandalok is brought back to Master Org's old chamber, seeing that Master Org, in a rampage, destroyed all of the General Org statues, which contained them, meaning that it is the last one. Mandalok isn't interesting as a villain at all. All it does is want to eat buildings and pollution. Honestly, the most compelling things about them is that the female personality was voiced by Barbara Goodson, aka Rita's voice actress. Story-wise, we follow this up with a plot point involving a little kid named Kite. It's absolutely stupid, except for the fact that it turns out the kid is, in fact, the reincarnated form of Animus, who is made up of 5 other Wild Zords. What's annoying about this is that before they discover that he's Animus, he starts ranting about humanity polluting crap, the ozone layer, the environment, blah 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 blah.
Power Rangers fight to protect the Earth, but humans are the ones destroying nature.
The lack of nuance is the big issue here. There's no real counter-argument offered or anything for little kids watching the show. It's just, humans suck and are polluting things. And beyond Cole just saying, people don't mean to pollute, it just happens with progress, there really isn't anything more in-depth to say. I don't mind Animus taking this position, that humans are the cause of so much environmental harm, but his solution is terrible. When Animus finally comes out of the preachy little dumbass, he says this:
I do not fight for the Orgs, but I will not fight for the humans either.
And he takes the Wild Zords away from the Rangers, saying that humans don't deserve to inherit the Earth because of the way they've treated it. And then this happens.
Once Animus had taken all the Wild Zords off the Animarium, Princess Sheila fell into a deep sleep.
Seriously, who the hell are you, narrator? Whose bright idea was it to add narration here? Anyway, point is, Animus's little humans are so bad because of the environment whining gets old real fast. From the way they're talking, it makes it sound like he wants to directly attack oil companies and kill anyone who drives a car. By taking away the Wild Zords, Animus pretty much dooms the planet he seems to love so much. Maybe instead of asserting your will over the things, you could ask the Wild Zords what they thought. And even then, it perpetuates this really frustrating idea that humanity is separate from nature. It is not! Human beings are just as much a part of the ecosystem as animals, because sometimes nature does go badly on its own front, causing damage through weather or animal activity, extinctions or declining populations of species because of predators overhunting, or just humanity working to conserve and preserve species that could have otherwise gone extinct. Yes, humanity causes a lot of problems, and even 20 years after this series came out, we're still dealing with greed and general dickery that's making things worse. But nature is not some perfect, harmonious utopia in and of itself, without sin or fault in anything bad that happens. If you think that nature never goes to war with itself, not even referring to animals here, but plants specifically, look up kudzu, Kogon grass, and privet. A lot of this is fallout from bad pop culture and pop science beliefs of the 90s. This embrace of nature as an almost godlike force in itself, that we cannot question the will of nature. A spiritualism that implied nature as perfection, and if we just got back to nature, everything would be fine. It's not helpful for kids watching this because it doesn't offer any kind of solutions for it. At least in the Mighty Morphin days, stuff like the Cleanup Club and trying to shut down waste dumps were being proactive, even if low-key environmentalism can't really save the world. Remember, a lot of the problems with the environment are not caused by individual actions, but by corporations. Here, the Rangers just say, yeah, it sucks, but that's progress. And Animus's solution is worse! He decides, I'm just going to take the Wild Zords and start over on another planet. Guess it was less that he cared about the Earth specifically, and more that he liked having a frickin' garden. What's worse is that the team says that Animus is right, and they haven't done enough to stop humans from damaging the Earth, when that's not their mandate. Sure, maybe they could speak out about it. They are public figures and could hold some influence, but stopping the orgs from making things worse is still important, and they're doing their best here. Animus offers Eric the chance to go to his new world since he was his friend 3,000 years prior. Notice you're not offering it to Sheila, you little prick. But Merrick, overhearing the Rangers fighting an org without the help of their Zords, tells him off.
They don't have you or the Wild Zords to protect them. All they have are their friends.
But then Animus wakes up Sheila and returns the Wild Zords because... friendship? Oh, he says it was all a test to see how dedicated they were to their task. Yeah, see, I think the 32 episodes that happened before this little test might have been a decent indicator of these people's dedication to their task. And I notice you don't rescind what you said about humans sucking, so no, up yours, you preachy little brat. You got caught looking like a jackass, and now you're trying to save face. Oh, but as an extra gift, he gives Cole a flying motorcycle, the Wild Force Rider. I'll get into that later. Animus leaves saying he isn't needed now, that the Rangers are truly dedicated to their task, blah blah blah. But this Animus crap isn't what you all want me to talk about, is it? No, there's something much more important to cover. Strangely, at the time in the lead up to the original version of this video, people wondered if it was something I would talk about, making me scratch my head about why exactly they think I would leave it out of the videos.
How do you know who I am?
I'm Carter Grayson, Lightspeed Rescue, Red Ranger.
The episode begins with Cogs digging up something on the surface of the moon. Leading the Cogs are the big bad Beetleborgs. Well, okay, not them specifically, but the costumes from it. As a reminder, Beetleborgs was another Saban-produced show utilizing footage from a Japanese tokusatsu series, in this case Metal Heroes, and for a time it was apparently more popular than Power Rangers. It makes for a cute, if possibly unintentional, in-joke by using those suits for the villains of this story. And who should be watching them but Andros, wearing the cloak that makes him completely conspicuous against the gray rocks. They spot him, of course, riding on horses after him. For the record, this is the Machine Empire here. Man, they must be in really bad shape if they're using horses. Anyway, Andros morphs and escapes, leading to the true reunion part of this episode.
Why, I even once met Lord Zed and Rita.
Yeah? So did I.
So, how did Bulk get back to Earth from Miranoi? Well, the best answer is, shut up and don't question it. Bulk and Skull are back together again.
Excuse me, sir. You have a phone call.
Now, there have been a lot of theories about Bulk and Skull's respect for Tommy, ranging anywhere from knowledge of his past as a ranger to simply being respectful to him given their past together. I, however, just kind of grin because in rewatching all the old episodes, I can't help but remember one particular scene.
Nobody insults Bulk.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be afraid to interrupt him too. As you saw, Carter shows up and recruits Cole, though we never get an answer why it's only him that they want. He brings Cole to the Nasada spaceport, where he reunites with Wes and Eric. TJ and Andros come in next. They've all been assembled by a veteran ranger, Tommy. Tommy partially explains the situation, Andros tracking down the remnants of the Machine Empire.
But I thought the Zero Rangers destroyed them years ago.
Well, for the record, it was Zed and Rita who destroyed the Machine Empire, but they weren't around when that happened, so we'll just pretend the Zeo Rangers did it. But yeah, Tommy says that while the Royal House of Gadgetry are dead, the Machine Empire's generals survived and are planning to take their revenge. So, how will they be getting to the moon to stop the Machine Empire from whatever they're doing?
I present the Astro Megaship Mark II.
My friends, we've come home.
Before they leave, Andros points out that he thought that there was at least one more Red Ranger on Earth. Tommy says he had hoped that he'd show up, but apparently he didn't. However, they hear a motorcycle outside and go out to check. Jason has arrived.
You didn't think I was gonna let you do this without the original Red Ranger, did you?
Meanwhile, on Miranoi, Leo once again takes the Quasar Saber out of the rock and does epic posing. On board the megaship, Tommy gives some more Cliff Notes summaries of the events of Zeo and how the Empire remnants have been organized under a General Vengeance. Don't worry everyone, as long as you guys are around, I don't see anything calling itself Vengeance ever being a serious threat to humanity. Still, that raises the question, what are they digging up on the moon?
Serpentera.
It seems at some point while hanging out in the Camper of Evil, Zed brought Serpentera back to the moon and buried it, probably to be used later when they were in a better position to use it. The Beetleborgs install a new reactor in Serpentera to fix its AAA battery issue. The Rangers arrive, and right out of the starting gate, they're badass.
You know, if you miss King Mondo that much, I promise we can help you join him.
The fights in this episode are phenomenal. The thing is, since In Space, there have been less and less unmorphed fights featured on the show, probably for reasons of budget over anything else. As such, it's just really impressive to see them actually kicking ass in civilian mode. And of course, Carter doesn't waste any time and shoots stuff, because that's how Carter rolls. The Beetleborgs head to Serpentera to try to board it, but Cole runs out to stop them. Stop! In the name of love! He gets knocked back, but before he's blasted, he's rescued by Leo and Aurico, the Red Equation Ranger. The group reunites, and of course, it's time.
What are we waiting for? Let's do it, guys. It's morphin' time!
Not showing anything past that, sadly, because of Content ID, which is a damn shame because all those morphing sequences at once are beautiful. Sure, no individual theme songs, but it'd be really hard to flow that many into each other anyway. This, my friends, is how you make a 10th anniversary special. It's incredible watching the fight sequences here, highlighting just how much has changed since the show began. It's especially cool to see the original Mighty Morphin suit doing the more extensive wirework stuff that's been in the more recent seasons. We see how technology has changed to allow for better special effects. Hell, they even pull off a Matrix bullet time camera spin. Or check this out, a speed up, slow down ramping effect 3 years before 300 did it. Vengeance manages to get into the horrible CGI Serpentera and takes off. Carter says there's no time to get back to the megaship, so Cole summons the Wild Force Rider in this incredibly goofy looking sequence where he flies at the thing. And yes, he uses the Rider to defeat Serpentera. Oh, and he even screeches in space. Power Rangers, where science dies due to alcohol poisoning. Cole flies right into the mouth of Serpentera and destroys it. This is the only major misstep of the episode, that Serpentera gets taken down so easily, but there is a reason for it. Anyway, the Rangers say goodbye to each other, and they have a good laugh about Tommy's popularity, especially when Cole calls him the greatest Ranger ever. But they all have their own things to say about why they're all awesome instead. So, for those who have never seen this before, or have seen it but know of all the continuity and questions surrounding it, let's get all of that out of the way, and there's a lot to cover with this. First and foremost, this is a reunion of all the Red Rangers, so where the hell is Rocky? Steve Cardenas was indeed approached to appear in the episode. However, he was moving at the time, and sadly they couldn't reach him when it came time to actually bring him in. He was, however, fully on board with coming back, it's just sometimes this sort of thing happens. Apparently he would have only assumed the Red Mighty Morphin powers if they couldn't get Austin St. John to be Jason. Personally, I would have put him in the ninja suit and dropped the Red Equation Ranger, but what you gonna do? Speaking of, Aurico is the only Ranger to not have his original actor reprise his role, which isn't that bad since he only had like 2 or 3 lines in the episode. Next question is of the powers, something that's hotly debated about. Most glaring of the problems is Jason's, since he had given up the Mighty Morphin powers to Rocky. One theory is that the Sword of Light didn't transfer the powers so much as copy them, but that tends to get thrown out for various reasons. Another theory is that during Zeo, Rocky gave the Morpher back to Jason. It's certainly plausible, Adam still had his Morpher, and we saw that the things can still function, and it's potentially possible for them to be repaired. I get a lot of behind-the-scenes information secondhand, so my original explanation given for how Jason officially got his powers back supposedly came from the writer, Amit Bhaumek, that involved stuff in non-canon material like comics, but I can't find a primary source on that. However, apparently Amit had a deeper explanation that he gave on Facebook, stating that they had decided not to explain to keep the episode from getting bogged down in continuity, but he had hoped to revisit the subject in a future episode, possibly in relation to the original plans for Ninja Storm that would have shown a flashback depicting the powers getting returned. I don't know about the accuracy of that any more than the rest, but it sounds plausible enough given what those plans were, which of course we'll talk about next time. And yeah, I guess you're wondering about Bulk and Skull too. Well, the theory postulated there is that the wormhole that the Galaxy Rangers used back in Trakeena's Revenge to bring them to Earth could have allowed Bulk to return to Earth too. Again, I don't really think it matters other than the two are working at a resort, again, kind of like a juice bar from their youth. I'm also guessing that, like their odd jobs they've had in the past, they did not keep this profession going for too long, given what we'll see of the two in the future. And oh yes, this is not the end for Bulk and Skull. As for TJ and the turbo powers, recall that Storm Blaster had a spare morpher for Justin, so it's entirely possible that Lightning Cruiser also had a spare turbo morpher for TJ. We never saw the Zeo powers being lost on screen, so it's most likely that Tommy still had them after he retired from active duty. Now, people have asked why he doesn't use them at other points we'll get to, same as with Adam back in Always a Chance, but my theory is a philosophical one. The Rangers are supposed to be a team, and a Ranger trying to act alone is just not done. They need the support of others to get through their hardships. I know it's stupid, but I'm gonna go with that since we don't have any other real answers. At this point, we're still, more than a decade off from the Master Morpher. There's also an alpha robot in the megaship we see and hear briefly, though he was supposed to have a few more lines in the original script. He's identified as Alpha 7, but since he has the original voice, and since we never learned the fate of the original Alpha 5, I'm just going to assume it's Alpha 5 and go with that. As you'll recall from the Lightspeed Rescue review, Danny Slavin had a falling out with the production team, so when he was asked to come back, he was on the fence about it. When he did finally decide to return, most of the filming had already been completed. As such, he was digitally inserted into several shots, and in one group shot where he's supposed to be unmorphed, you can clearly see the suited version. There were 3 other former cast members who were in the episode as voices for the Beetleborgs: Walter Jones, who played Zack, Catherine Sutherland, who played Kat, and Archie Cow, who played Kai. Sure, most of it was just 1 or 2 lines and some grunting, but it's still cool that they did that. Another trivia note, the chess set that Bulk and Skull are playing with is the one used from In Space during the Psycho Ranger saga. The script evolved pretty significantly over time, starting with an outline by director and action choreographer Koichi Sakamoto. The Beetleborg suits were always intended to be used, but in this case they would just be 5 metallic warriors who attack Earth with a giant laser, and the various Ranger appearances are spread out across the episode. The end would feature a 2-minute montage of scenes from across the 10 years of the franchise. Producer Jonathan Zacher wrote a more official outline developing things further, including Alpha summoning all the Red Rangers together to fight the metallic warriors and their big laser, including an amusing bit where Tommy encounters a street vendor who wants to sell him Bulk and Skull rock band t-shirts in green and white. And you guys doubted the power of Bulk and Skull as a rock band. It was thought that this version was still a little too shallow, with the 5 metallic warriors not really being seen as much of a threat to warrant all this, so enter Amit Bhawmik and his outline. In this case, he dropped the metallic warriors idea, and the overall plot is similar to the finished episode, but in this case, it's a cult that worshipped Dark Spectre trying to resurrect him, succeeding, and the 10 Rangers together are able to destroy him again. The hope was also to explain why the hell Malagor from the Turbo movie and Dark Spectre look the same, other than reused suits. In this case, that both were members of the same species, but Malagor was a relative infant compared to the fully grown Dark Spectre. Because of the cost-saving decision to use the Beetleborg suits, that led to the idea of the Machine Empire trying to dig up Serpentera. Still, from a writing perspective, one of the fun things that Amit Bhawmik wanted to do was flip the formula of the show on its head. Instead of a big bad setting up shop and launching monsters from the moon or wherever, the Rangers proactively decide to take the fight to the enemy and attack them on the moon to finish them off. It's rather neat in that regard. Forever Red dug deep into Power Rangers lore, bringing up everything they could to make the episode a great little nostalgia trip and overall a damn enjoyable experience. It's one of the few episodes I'll happily rewatch anytime. It's the kind of thing Power Rangers fans have been wanting for years, a team-up of all the old Ranger teams. Sure, it didn't have everybody, and we never learn the reason why it's Red Rangers only for the mission. There's a cut bit where Carter says the other Wild Force Rangers need to stay to defend Turtle Cove, but again, why only Red Rangers? But 10 Rangers from the past 10 seasons was an awesome sight to behold, and making for one of the best episodes of the show. However, it almost wasn't made. Disney was pretty hands-off in the production of Wild Force, but what got their attention was that the Wild Force production team was planning on doing another two-parter in the same block of episodes that they had done Reinforcements from the Future. They asked about it, and Jonathan Zacher explained about the 10th anniversary and their hopes to release it either as a video special or as an hour-long special that could be broken up into 2 parts for syndication. Disney, being Disney, responded very simply: "Why are you advertising old toys that aren't made anymore?" In return, Zacher explained the team-up tradition. However, Disney was upset because they had already done a team-up episode, one very expensive and lacking Sentai footage. They managed to negotiate it down to 1 episode, but the production team overshot the episode in the hopes that in post-production, Disney would relent and just let them do a 2-parter. Disney held firm, so a lot of the footage got cut, mostly just extensions on scenes already there, which you can find on YouTube if you're curious, though it's pretty much unedited footage with multiple takes. To make matters worse, Disney apparently flat out refused to hire people outside of the company to make the CGI for the episode. I've read that there was a planned battle at the end with Serpentera, which was supposed to include a whole bunch of old Megazords fighting Serpentera, and scrapping the outside CGI team meant that ending had to be scrapped too. Furthermore, the first rough cut for Serpentera was evidently hideous, barely looking like it and colored purple of all things. With all the budget reductions on it, they ran out of money to finish the episode. As such, the production team went to Bandai for the money needed to complete it. Bandai agreed to finance the remainder, but only if they promoted a new toy in the episode, the Wild Force Rider. And that is why we have the ridiculously dumb sequence of the Wild Force Rider destroying Serpentera, who once vaporized a planet. We'll also forgive the scaling issues, what with Serpentera being so huge before, but not so much in the ending shots. Some other cut details, for funsies, include Skull saying that he's trying to avoid Professor Phenomenus, Alpha 7 getting more lines and interacting with Kolobit, who is a little freaked out about going into space, more scenes of the Rangers interacting on the megaship, and the ending scene of the Rangers walking away and talking about themselves included Andros bragging that he killed Zordon. Yeah, you can see why that one might have made a few heads tilt if it had made it to air. The main story continues in The Master's Herald. Mandalaka is severely pissed that the Rangers have retrieved their Wild Zords and sends Jindrax and Toxica away. A new Duke Org, Onikage, appears and swears his fealty to Mandalak, but then goes to Jindrax and Toxica and tells them that they can be redeemed in Mandalak's eyes if they kidnap Princess Sheila. I love this guy right away, and it's all in the voice. Very subdued and controlled. Kinda reminds me of General Havoc.
That's all right, I can do it by myself. I was just trying to do you a favor.
They sneak onto the Animarium, Toxica even ditching her veil for the job. However, she also tries to touch the viewing fountain and gets zapped for her trouble. They retreat, but Mandalak is pissed that they ruined Onikage's plan. However, Onikage says Toxica may still be of use to them. While the Rangers are distracted by a battle with the Orgs, Toxica sneaks onto the Animarium disguised as Merrick. She lures Sheila out and is about to take her when... What? What? What?
I'm not just a princess. I'm a guardian of the Earth.
If that's true, how come up until this point you've been nothing but a major load? Easily kidnapped at least 3 times now. Seriously, she's pulling off flips and kicks. This is completely out of left field. Sheila asks Toxica what they want with her, but Toxica admits that she doesn't know. She's only following her master's orders.
I see. You have no will of your own.
Ouch, that one probably hurts more than all the physical damage we've been seeing in this season. They fight some more, and Toxica is thrown into the water. However, it's revealed that she cut off her horn at Onikage's suggestion, since apparently it would allow her to survive the water. Onikage says that it'll grow back, but Sheila says that the others are just using her for their own goals. Toxica returns with the princess, but she collapses, the horn apparently being a necessary part of her biology, and Onikage saying he has no idea what she's talking about when she says the horn will grow back. The The Rangers arrive to save Sheila, but Mandalok uses Toxica as a shield from the Rangers as weapons. She's vaporized, much to Jindrax's horror. Onikage makes himself grow as Mandalok orders Jindrax to take Sheila back to their lair. However, the giant Onikage turns out to be an illusion, Merrick shooting the real one. Onikage retreats and the Rangers are left to ponder the loss of the princess. Jindrax is wrought with grief, not sure who he can trust anymore if his own kind would betray them. Onikage says that if the Rangers want the princess, to meet them at the exact same deserty hill area that's in every episode. Onikage unleashes shadow forms of the Rangers to fight them, and Mandalok congratulates him on a trap well sprung. Onikage says he's just serving his one true master.
Master Org?
Naturally, Onikage reveals that he actually worked for Master Org this whole time. Mandalok tries to charge the dude and gets blown up for his trouble. When Onikage is about to kill Jindrax, he teleports away with Sheila. God, now she's being kidnapped from her kidnappers. The two talk, Sheila telling Jindrax how sorry she is about Toxica. Onikage catches up with Jindrax, Sheila pushing Onikage out of the way before he can deliver a killing blow to the Duke Org. He takes Sheila back to Master Org, Jindrax following them. He declares his hatred for Master Org, since he does nothing but destroy everything around him, even those who are most loyal to him. The Rangers manage to destroy Onikage while Master Org takes Sheila away. Jindrax gets contacted by Toxica from the spirit world. There's a spirit world now?
Hell. You're in hell.
And is told how to bring her back to life. While he finishes the plan and restores her, Master Org begins a dark ceremony in the Nexus. Toxica tells Jindrax that while in the spirit world, that she had a lot of time to think, and that they need to start looking after themselves. It also turns out that Sheila's necklace is a source of unimaginable power, and Master Org takes it to continue his plans. Sheila tries to convince Master Org to give up his evil ways.
Cole forgave you for what you did to his parents.
When did he do that? He just didn't want to take revenge on him because he feared he'd be no better than him. It's not the same as forgiving him. Using the power of the necklace, Master Org resurrects his general orgs to defend the Nexus while he completes the ceremony. Meanwhile, Jindrax and Toxica go to the Rangers and explain how to gain access to the Nexus. While they let the Rangers do the heavy lifting and deal with the Org generals, the two Duke Orgs head into the Nexus and rescue Princess Sheila. The Nexus starts collapsing around them, Master Org meditating as he finishes the ceremony, his body crumbling into dust. With Master Org supposedly gone, Jindrax and Toxica declare the war between Orgs and humans over. The two leave the Rangers on good terms.
It felt strangely good to help somebody for a change. Yeah? Well, don't get used to it, Jindrax.
The season comes to a close with the end of the Power Rangers. The Rangers celebrate their supposed victory.
The Power Rangers are over!
Oh, thank God! I can finally stop doing this retrospective and continually trying to get it past Content ID and move on to, oh no, so terrible, the show is over, what will I ever do with my life? With the realization that their battle is over, the Rangers ponder what this means for them.
We'll do what anybody does. We'll go on living.
However, in the rubble of the Nexus, a glowing object called an Org Heart emerges, and Master Org's vines start encompassing the city. Master Org appears, mutated.
It is I, Master Org!
I, Igor, will live forever!
The Rangers go in to fight, but he walks through them, the group not landing a single shot on him. He even destroys Cole's battleizer in a single stroke and grows without any peanuts. Oh, and then Animus comes back. No sparkles or glows or anything, he just appears out of nowhere. Sheila tells the Rangers to withdraw, but Merrick stays behind to help Animus, regretting how he failed to help Animus in the battle 3,000 years before. However, Master Org is too powerful and smashes the Pretazord, actually destroying their animal crystals. What's worse, Merrick's Morpher vanishes and Animus reverts to Kite. Before Master Org can kill the two, the Animarium flies down and rams Master Org, teleporting the two up to it. Kite dies and evaporates into sparkles. Wow, on-screen human child death this time. With his new powers, Master Org teleports himself onto the Animarium. He kills the Falcon Zord and the Rangers morph, rallying the Wild Zords to defend the Animarium. The Wild Zords fight valiantly and blast him apart, but thanks to the Org Heart powering him, he reforms. All of the Wild Zords are killed one by one, even the original 5. The Rangers' Morphers vanish, and Master Org plunges his sword into the Animarium, crashing it and causing it to start listing to the side.
This planet is no longer yours! The age of humans is over! and the age of orcs has begun!
The putrids land in force as the sky turns dark, Turtle Cove encompassed in rain, normal plant life quickly dying. Part 1 ends with the animarium in freefall and the Rangers clinging to the ground. The animarium crashes back into the original lake that it rose from. The Rangers, seeing Master Org walking around through the city, decide to charge in without their powers. The 6 go through the putrids, putting up a good fight, but without their powers, they're simply outgunned. Cole gets to have his big hero moment as he rips off his team jacket and saves a little kid from the putrids Tarzan style. Seeing Cole still fighting, the Rangers get their second wind and once again kick some ass. Taylor even retrieves Cole's jacket for him. Cole tries to swing at Master Org, but he just gets slapped away. You know, he never did quite master that whole charging at the big monster thing. Master Org tells them it's hopeless without their powers.
We may not be Power Rangers anymore, and our Wild Zords may be gone, but their spirits still live! Inside us!
The Rangers proudly declare who they are and what they stand for. A very cool shot because we so rarely see the Rangers fighting in rain, morphed or unmorphed. Naturally, Master Org is unimpressed.
I will make you extinct, just like the Wild Zords!
However, the clouds suddenly break as Wild Zord spirits emerge from the sky, including the remaining Wild Zords that the group hadn't found. Their crystals are reformed along with their powers.
Master Org! Your evil ends here!
Using their weapons, they slice the Org heart in half, destroying him and finally bringing an end to the Orgs. The Wild Zords all return to the animarium, and Princess Sheila tells them that it's sadly time for her to leave.
I'm gonna take the Wild Zords and the animarium up into the sky, where they'll be safe until the Earth needs them once again.
She then asks the team to give up their jackets and morphers. Okay, this is bullcrap. The morphers I understand, but you're asking for the jackets back? What? It's a freaking jacket! Are the powers dependent on them or something? They're gonna find the thing on eBay in a week since now she wants to turn the animarium into her own private palace or something and needs cash. Ugh.
As long as the spirit of the Earth is alive in your hearts, you will always be Power Rangers.
Random narrator returns, only now it's Alyssa.
So the princess took the animarium back into the sky where she still sleeps.
Cole says his final farewells to his parents and even brings a flower to the grave of Dr. Adler.
Perhaps you will finally know peace as well.
Random narrator then tells us what happens to the Rangers. Cole left to help animals in his travels, Taylor returned to the Air Force, that must have been a fun debriefing, and still sees her Wild Zord as she flies around. Max and Danny went on a green screen vacation across the world. Merrick decided to just wander around with Zenaku, who's now a separate being for some reason. Oh, and thanks for the lack of resolution on the relationship between him and Sheila. Glad we got invested in their will they, won't they, only for it to not even be a thing in the finale. And then there's Alyssa, who became a grade school teacher telling us all this. So, was she the other narrator too? Anyway, a kid asks if this was all true.
What do you think?
Power Rangers Wild Force gets a very mixed reaction from the fans, and it's easy to see why. While plenty of previous seasons have had their own environmental messages here and there, some more overt than others, the Animus arc really comes off as condescending and patronizing. Furthermore, the acting isn't exactly up to par with those that had come before, a lot of dialogue just coming off as clunky even when spoken seriously. Some of it sounds like a direct translation from Japanese with the way the sentences are phrased. As a personal theory, I wonder if there wasn't also an attempt to market it to really little kids, considering the number of child actors in the season. All of them terrible, by the way. That seemed to be kindergarten or first grade age. The tone of the show is very much akin to a story for little children. Fairy tale logic, the very simplistic moral messages. The tale of the animarium is told as a children's story, and it ends with Alyssa telling the story to equally young and annoying children. Sure, Power Rangers is a kids show, but I'd like to think that the age group for the show had at least gotten past finger painting. It just feels at odds with the fact that this could have been the last season of the show. As for the acting, I actually thought the first half of the season was going pretty well acting-wise. Taylor is obviously the best of the bunch, able to display a full range of emotions and make pretty much all of her dialogue work. The others, it seems like the problem is that it's written for much younger actors than who we actually have. These are supposed to be roughly college-age Rangers, but the dialogue feels at times like it's for middle schoolers, if not younger. Behind the scenes, it becomes clear that not all the acting was the fault of the actors. Jonathan Zacher was a huge fan of the original Sentai shows, to the point where he was insisting that more and more of the storylines in Power Rangers should match them. In addition, I've heard that Zacher's love of the Sentai shows had him actually bring in several Japanese directors who had worked on those shows, many of whom did not speak English. It really goes a long way to explain Cole's dialogue quirks after reinforcements from the future, with moments of almost Shatnerian pausing, like this classic bit.
I don't know much about spaceships, but I will go wherever I must to protect the Earth.
Taylor's line here really reminds me of something that would be more appropriate in Japanese.
Be quiet. A kid shouldn't talk like that.
I will say, though, that despite the Animus arc, the poor acting, and the annoying parts of the last 10 minutes of The End of the Power Rangers, I actually really enjoyed Wild Force. The action was fast-paced and well-scored, the group really seemed to gel on screen, though it's reported that not all the cast got along, and the overall story wasn't too bad. In fact, I really liked the backstory for Dr. Adler and Cole, the tragedies and all-too-human feelings that came about, with Cole's own personality showing a lack of resentment despite the pain he suffered through. The characters themselves had a wide range of personalities, and the Zords being alive actually was important in the season as opposed to Lost Galaxy, where the Galactabeasts were just alive because that's what the Sentai was like. There was a rumor that Jindrax and Toxica would stand revealed as Cole's parents, but that's been debunked. According to Amit Bhaumek, Fox hated the insinuation of anybody having died, but were on board with everyone that Master Org killed with his vines coming back to life once he was defeated. And indeed, the plan was to resurrect his parents at the end with the Big Bad's defeat, the vines still covering the Earth despite him being gone. The Rangers would try to clear the vines and everyone would return. However, as Disney took over and weren't really part of the initial pitch, they didn't really think about Cole's parents. And since they needed to save money for the finale, they ended up using more Sentai footage, and the Vine thing wasn't as significant as initially planned, so Cole's parents remained dead. As I said, I like that tragic aspect to Cole's character, that he goes on this journey to find his parents, but ultimately he can never be reunited with them. The fact that he never knew them probably helps explain why he's not truly angry at Dr. Adler for what he did to them. Admittedly though, Cole didn't really do much to actually attempt to find his parents, he just sat down and stared at the photo a lot. It was Alyssa who actually recommended looking into the records to find them. He otherwise maintained an upbeat attitude, and throughout the show, possibly as a result of his empathic heart-reading ability giving him insight into life and others, broken only during the revelations about what happened to his family. Speaking of Alyssa, it's hard to get a beat on her character. She's just perky, sometimes annoyingly so, but the same can be said of Danny and Max. Still, she actually was the one in the group with martial arts training, and she can be thought of as the second most empathetic character after Cole. Max's character was built around his insecurities of being the youngest of the group. And while I said that it seemed like the characters were supposed to be written as middle schoolers, but saddled with actors they couldn't pretend to be younger, it helps explain his friendship with Danny. Danny doesn't care that Max is younger than him, since Danny seems to suffer from a severe inferiority complex at times. Max's youthful optimism is probably why the two work so well as a bromance. Yes, them repeatedly saying, "Never give up," as their catchphrase could get eye-rolling at times, but that's only because it's so simple and cheesy. But hey, remember, Power Rangers. The old days had more phenomenal, so we can live with never give up. Sadly, the Danny subplot of his relationship with the flower girl, I'm sorry, I really can't remember her name, really seemed like it could have gone somewhere, at least acknowledged in the finale, but sadly it just kind of petered out. But hey, he was making progress with her, especially after she discovered he was the Black Ranger. Taylor is an Air Force pilot, and as such, she's from a military background. She says she joined the Air Force in order to locate the Animarium, since she had dreams of it since she was a child, but the Air Force still was what made her the tougher person that she was on the team. She was abrasive, strong-willed, and basically not someone you wanted to screw with. She was initially reluctant to let Cole on, but by the episode Secrets and Lies, she was on board with him as leader and as part of the team. She softened a little bit throughout the season, and I'd like to think reinforcements from the future was where she had her most significant change, with Eric being an influence and showing her it was okay to like the others, though it went back and forth depending on what episode it was. Merrick is one of the lamest 6th Rangers ever. Don't get me wrong, in theory his story is great and overall it did work. It just really came off like the writers were arguing about what to do with him. Well, he's a lone wolf. Okay, but he's been locked up in Zenaku for years and he used to have a relationship with the princess. Well, then he still helps the Rangers and is friends with them. But I thought he was a lone wolf. He's both! It gets really annoying in the unfinished business episode. Why exactly does he feel responsible for Zenaku's actions? It was clear from the beginning the wolf mask was in the driver's seat. No one for an instant failed to trust him. And as I said earlier, if it was such a big deal for a princess and a warrior to get together, why the heck were they an item in the past? And what does it matter now since their entire civilization is gone? Princess Sheila was nothing but a load. It's not a matter of it being a Disney thing, she was just a poorly conceived character. She didn't do anything. She rarely had any wisdom or intelligence for the Rangers to use. She was just kidnapped and sang that stupid-ass song. Only one time in 40 episodes did she actually do something shocking, the karate kick, and that was never repeated or mentioned again. Not to mention, what exactly is she a princess of? She rules a kingdom of herself! Let's talk about some story stuff for a minute. One of the reasons that I like to praise the original Green with Evil 5-parter and say that it's well written isn't because of the dialogue. Of course, the dialogue can be clunky and cheesy at times. It's early 90s Power Rangers. However, from a story perspective, it was very well crafted. The first part established the stakes. New character, cuts off the Rangers from Zordon, and is easily able to defeat them. Part 2. The Rangers start to recover a little, but Jason is kidnapped and forced to endure a fight against Goldar without his Morpher. Part 3. Jason fights the Green Ranger and escapes. Part 4. The Rangers are still barely holding on, and they endure their worst defeat, but at the end they learn who the Green Ranger is. Part 5. The Green Ranger is turned to good, Zordon is restored. Each episode felt wholly unique and did different things for the overall storyline. Conversely, the Zenaku storyline seemed a bit repetitive. Rangers say they'll recover a Zord. Big fight! Minor, if any, revelations about Zenaku, and finally, lose another Zord. That's a problem with a lot of these seasons as I see them. There's a little bit of build-up, some interesting ideas, but in the end it's just repetitive and the conclusions aren't all that satisfactory. While I said that Disney was more hands-off with Power Rangers, that's not entirely accurate. What did get under their skin a bit was the level of violence in the show. They didn't want as many weapons or fighting or things blowing up. And to be fair, it feels like at times Wild Force steps up the violence a bit, especially to Cole. He gets blasted a lot while unmorphed. Fight scenes had to get trimmed frequently for a few seconds here or there. And that's kind of hilarious to think about nowadays when there's been much worse violence in Marvel and Star Wars. Though maybe less explosions. Power Rangers does like to blow things up a lot. If I may be a bit fan-wanky, it's interesting to note that the destruction of Animaria was apparently 3,000 years ago, which also happened to be the time of the battle on Miranoi, where the Quasar Sabers were forced into the stone. And isn't it interesting to note that the Galacta Beasts just happened to be living Zords with a robotic animal form, just like the Wild Zords? And isn't it funny that we never did get an answer about what that incident in Lost Galaxy was that led to everything there, isn't it? I think Wild Force is overall a good season. There's plenty to dislike about it, but I think there's just as much to enjoy. Good action, fairly strong characters, complex villains, fantastic team-up episodes. And yeah, the acting is mixed at best, but we'll see far worse in later seasons, and frankly, we've seen far worse in earlier seasons. Like in Space, this was once again going to be the final season of the show. Disney, in its purchase of several Saban series, had planned to shut down the shows and only air reruns in order to save money. Hence why the final episode of Wild Force is called The End of the Power Rangers. While it wasn't a send-off to everything that had come before it, the team-ups allowed closure and a sense of optimism about the future of the Earth and those who wielded the power. If you skip the last half of the final episode, End of the Power Rangers is a pretty damn epic conclusion, full of tension, action, and a great last stand by the Rangers. However, once again, Power Rangers was saved from cancellation. This time, however, it came because it was suggested that the show would be a lot cheaper to produce if they moved production over to New Zealand. But we'll discuss the changes in store there when we brave the weather in Power Rangers Ninja Storm.
I guess it's time to say goodbye again. May the power protect you all.